here's the really short version of my Sandy sweater. Back in 2017, I knit a really cool sweater. About a month later, I decided it wasn't right, and I modified it. Several months later, I decided it still wasn't right, and I modified it again. About a month after that, I decided it still wasn't right, and I modified it a third time. Finally, it was right, and then I ruined it. Follow me into the lounge for the whole crazy story. And if you're someone who gets squeamish at the thought of cutting your knitting, you might want to join me in a stiff drink. Here's the original Sandy sweater by Marie Wallin. It was published in 2013 in a Rowan magazine and then in another knitting magazine. I saw it in 2017 and I just thought it was amazing. I love a good graphic, and I particularly loved the offset stripes and the varying widths of the stripes. I just thought the whole thing was really striking. I liked the shape of the neckband. I liked that it was fitted, had a 3/4 sleeve. It just checked all my boxes. And to top it off, I had yarn in my stash that was going to work. The original sweater was knit in Rowan cotton glass, which is a sport weight 100% cotton. I had in my stash some Katia cotton here. It's discontinued now. That is mostly cotton, about 85%, and then about 15% nylon polyamide or something like that, which is not only cotton, but extremely stretchy cotton, which is really cool. And then for the stripe, I could have picked any sport weight solid out of my stash and been perfectly happy with it. But I thought I would get super clever and use a gradient Zauberball wool blend that I had. I'd bought this gradient Zauberball at a fiber show at some point and couldn't figure out what I was going to do with it. This was perfect. So not only was I going to have the cool offset stripes, but I was also going to have a cool gradient change from gray to green throughout those stripes. Fantastic. Away I went. I knit up the sweater. I tried it on. Looks so cool, with one exception. Issue number 1. It was too short. If you look carefully in this very stylized and artistic photo angle that I took, you can see that that sweater just comes to my waist, maybe an inch below. In the original pattern over here, you can see that it was meant to sit at least to high hip length. I could still wear it, and it looked pretty good, but I just found myself all day long trying to tug it down, and every time I bent over, I felt like, there was the potential of kind of a faux plumber's butt thing that could happen depending on what pants I was wearing. So I needed to add length. Now, because this sweater was knit in pieces from the bottom up, there was no undoing a bind off edge, unraveling it back, picking up the stitches, knitting more length in the white, and then redoing the ribbing. That couldn't happen. The only way I could replicate that would be to cut the knitting in the white section, pull out a whole row, put the live stitches back on the needle, then knit down in the white, although the stitches would be slightly offset because that's what happens when you change knitting direction after picking them up, and then either graft the original ribbing back on or re-knit the ribbing. Now, I'm calling it ribbing, although it was actually about an inch or so of seed stitch that finished off the bottom edge. I wasn't particularly keen on either of those options, so I thought an easier way to do it would just be to make the rib deeper. And I had been seeing some patterns around that period that had some really kind of cool double hems, like a short front hem over a longer back hem. And I thought, I'll just try that out. I think that might look kind of cool on this sweater. So what I did, you can see here, is on the wrong side, I went to the top of the hem on the inside and picked up all the same stitches all around the top of the hem on the inside and knit a whole new deeper hem underneath to make a double layer. So that original inch or so of seed stitch was sitting on top of this cool broken garter stitch rib that I put underneath. The depth was fine. The double layer did not work. It was too much. It was just too heavy and didn't look right. So now I had to decide what to do. I either had to take back that whole new hem that I just added and then remove the original ribbing and start all over again, or remove the original ribbing from on top completely and be left with one row that I couldn't quite get rid of at the top edge. So what I decided to do was remove about half of the original seed stitch finished bottom edge, leave the stitches live, and then hand sew them down into place on top of the new ribbing I had added. Here's what that looked like. You can see there the original seed stitch finish sitting on top of my cool broken rib. Cool. I liked it. I put it on. Here it is. Okay, the length is better. Is it flattering now? Not so much. And this brings us to issue number 2. Really? It was too tight. Now, you're going to ask me, how did that happen, Nicole? You are such an avid swatcher. How on earth did you end up with a sweater that was too small? You're absolutely right. I 100% swatch everything, and I nag you endlessly to do the same. Now, in 2024, back in 2017, I'm thinking not so much. I'm thinking I probably just did a cheater swatch, which means that I took that white Katya cotton and did a little swatch of it and checked my gauge, and that's all I did. And I probably erred on the side of going down a size because there was so much stretch in that cotton yarn. I thought I would get away with it. But as you can see from this picture, I really felt like I was kind of snossaged into that sweater. No, Oscar, there's no snossages for you. And you can see that it kind of distorts the stripes, and although there is a lot of shape, it's just all a little bit too, And so I set it aside. About 6 months or so later, I picked it up again in July of 2018 because I thought it's really too cool of a sweater to just have it go to waste like that. There's got to be something I could do. So, because I'm me, and I'm just a little bit fearless sometimes. Not irresponsible, just fearless. I thought, I'm going to turn this pullover into a cardigan. Never mind that I don't have any steeking stitches in the middle. I'm just going to cut it open. So you can see here in this picture that I marked the center. I found the center and marked it with a line of stitches, the running marker, and then I sewed close down each side with the sewing machine to make sure that that very stretchy and somewhat slippery cotton blend yarn was going to stay put. And then, here's the part, you might want to close your ears if this is going to freak you out. I just cut it open. After I cut it open, I picked up all the stitches along the front edges and I knit myself a ribbed band in the same ribbing that I had put down on the bottom. And because the inside edges looked pretty sloppy with that machine stitched and tons of cut ends from all the striping, and I didn't have any fabric to roll over and sew down, I actually picked up on the inside edge of the ribbing, picked up the stitches all the way along, knit myself a tiny little facing, and hand stitched that down into place. Isn't that kind of fancy? I think it's kind of fancy. Now, if the cardigan was open at the bottom, it looked pretty good, both front and on the inside. Nice and clean and tidy. You know how I feel about tidy. Yes, Oscar, except for the house. He's not wrong. And then I decided to continue, because I now had a green band up the center front, I decided it also needed the contrast around the neckline. So I picked up all the stitches around the neckline and added a narrow ribbed edge around the neck as well. And here it is. Ta-da! Cardified. Pretty good, right? I was happy now, right? No. Do you need a martini break? I need a martini break. This is a lot. This brings us to issue number 3, I didn't like the neckline. Unlike adding length to the hem or turning it into a cardigan, this was actually going to be a little bit more challenging. The sweater was knit in pieces from the bottom up and sewn together, including the set-in sleeves. The only way I could fix that neckline by knitting it would be to take apart almost all the seams in the upper body, re-knit those 2 fronts from here up, and sew it all back together again. Did I want to do that? No, hell no. So what did I do? Well, feeling emboldened by having done an afterthought steek, I thought, what the heck? I can do an afterthought neckline, put the garment under my sewing machine, and sewed a V-neck shape and cut off those triangles. There they are, cut off. Then I picked up the stitches starting at the front edge, picked up stitches along the cutoff edge, and then carried on picking up stitches on top of the ribbed collar edge that I had already put there. Yep, I cut across that too. So it actually turned out really cool because you can see how it's deeper in the back and then it goes narrower down in this front edge. Pretty darn groovy, right? And then I put a single button and did a little tiny I-cord, or maybe I crochet chained this, I can't tell. I did a little tiny loop on the other side and created a lovely V neckline with a single button loop. Ta-da! It looked great. I was thrilled. I loved wearing it. Happy end to a challenging story, right? Wrong. This is the part where I took this lovely sweater and I ruined it. How did I ruin it, you ask? I washed it. It needed to be washed. I washed it the way I always wash my sweaters. Hand wash with soak or another kind of wool wash. But this time I put it in the soak and I went away and I didn't come back for a long time. I think like maybe 2 days. And guess what? The colors bled. And they bled down here. And they bled all over here. And they did that because I left it too long. And did I try to get it out right away? Nope. So what do I do now? No idea. I did consider dabbing the cotton part with bleach, but I couldn't quite figure out how I was going to do that without bleaching also the colored yarn. Anybody got any bright ideas? I'd love to hear them. Because it's a cool sweater, right? I mean, look at how great this neckline looks on me. It's exactly what I like. And it's got these really cool broken up stripes. It's just groovy and ruined. It looks like I had a mustard fight with somebody. Maybe I could blame Oscar. Anyway, it's too sad and I have to take it off. Now, my poor Sandy sweater is not the only sweater to which I have done aftermarket modifications. I also modified my longline sweater by Joji Locatelli. I think I talked about this one before too, but I'm not sure in which video. Anyway, it was long and I had put cool pockets in it and I decided I didn't like it long anymore. And so I cut it and just did a tiny bit of narrow ribbing and bound it off. Excellent. But long before that, after I had knit it, I somehow knit the armholes way too deep and decided rather than frogging the whole thing back and redoing it, I would pick up stitches in the bottom of the armhole and add a gusset. So you can see I picked up stitches down here and then I did short rows back and forth, and then up into the armhole in kind of a curve. I'm sorry. I know this is really hard to see. Anyway, I kind of added this wedgy shape to fill in the underside of the armhole. And then I did the sleeves. And another one that was a pretty major aftermarket modification, although it didn't require any cutting, was adding this leafy lace edge to this overly scoop-necked sweater. This is the Gramercy Park by Patty Lyons. This modification went very smoothly and was perfect the first time. I think I might have to do a whole video on all of the types of modifications that I did after the fact and how I did them. Tutorial, would you like that? Let me know. And guess what? I'm going to do it all again because I have this sweater that I talked about in the Marling video, and I had some lovely advice from my folks in the Knicoleknits After Hours Lounge. If you're interested in being a member of the After Hours Lounge, there's a join button below the title of this video if you're on a browser, or if you can't see the join button, there will be a link in the description box. Whatever you're on, you'll see 3 little dots or more or something down below the title. If you click that, it'll give you the description box. If you still can't see the link, click more or the dots again and really open the description box all the way up and it'll be there. When you click on the link, it'll take you to a video that tells you all about what's going on in the After Hours Lounge. So I talked to my After Hours Loungers about what I was going to do about this summery yet too heavy sweater and how I kind of wanted to turn it into a jacket and what were my options going to be. And they had lots of great ideas. And I'm still kind of going back and forth between two. The main issue is I don't like the neckline. I can wear it open as a jacket over a white tee and it looks pretty good, but I just don't like this kind of neckline on a cardigan. I either want a V-neck or a shawl collar or more like a shirt collar or jacket collar. So I could do a couple of things here. I could do the same thing that I did to Sandy at the neck. And I could just sew and cut this and turn it into a V-neck, something like that, because I think that looks pretty cool. And then pick up the stitches and redo all the ribbing around all the edges all at once. Or what I might try first, before taking that drastic step of sewing and cutting, because once you sew and cut, that's it. There's no going back. That's a permanent modification. Most modifications in knitting are flexible and can be undone and changed. That one cannot. I like the idea of this having a collar that comes up and turns down a little bit in the front. So I think what I'm going to try is I'm going to remove the front bands, which were put on last. I'm going to take those off. I'm going to undo the bind off at the neckline, and I'm going to knit the ribbing up higher so that I have a higher, just straight up rib. And then I'm going to replace the ribbing on the front with just an I-cord finish. And I'm going to see what that looks like. And if it sits the way I think it's going to sit on my body without the collar. I'm hoping the collar kind of stands up away from the cool cables because I don't want to cover up and lose my cool cables. I'm also going to shorten it because I'm finding it's just a smidge long and I'm kind of liking my cardies just high hip length these days, a little bit shorter just because of the way I am shaped at the moment. I find that's an easier to wear, more flattering fit for me. I don't have to worry so much about the fact that my hips are that much bigger than my bust or my waist. So I'm going to do that and see how it goes. More collar, I-cord finish at the front edges, shorter. First I'll shorten it. No, first I'll remove the ribbing on the front edges, then I will shorten it, then I will knit the new collar, and then I will add the I-cord edges, and we'll come back and take a look at it after I do that. It's not going to be in this video. So talk to us. Have you ever done aftermarket modifications? Did you have a finished sweater or other garment that was completely wrong and you figured out a way to solve it? Have you done sweater surgery? Have you done something as simple as changing the length? Have you ever done anything to your sweater afterwards? Or did you ruin it by washing it? I know you're out there. I'm going to suggest that you go watch this video on how to knit an honest swatch, because if I had actually knit an honest swatch, I might have avoided most, if not all, of the issues that I had with Sandy. So keep those needles clicking. I say goodbye. Oscar says goodbye. And as always, we'll see you next week.